Welcome to Thursday Night Saws. Tim Ard here. Looks like Warren Causey has checked in. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Very good, very good. And tonight I have planned to talk a little bit about carburetor adjustments. Had a question on that, and also on looking at some sharpening tools. So hopefully, if everybody gets on here, we can kind of discuss that. Do you guys have a good week?
Pretty good week, not bad.
Yeah. John, you've been working in Texas?
All right, got me.
There you are.
Have not been to Texas. I wish I could go, but just stuck here with Habitat, working with them. And then last week I was in Batesville
Yeah.
training.
Yeah. I
So
saw you had a great class there.
yeah, went really well.
And Warren, what have you been doing this week?
Um, got our training finalized and everything. Getting ready. See, a week from today is our 3-day training program. First one for the organization, and then doing a lot of design work for a local arborist, doing some CAD stuff.
Oh, good.
Um, so yeah, having a lot of fun with that. He's got some pretty neat ideas, so I'm just working on the 3D modeling, and everything for that. So it's
Super,
been good.
super.
And then studying for track.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the OSHA session?
No, I did not. I was stuck at work doing
It
some
was
HVAC stuff. So was it good? Did you get
Peter,
the
Peter Gerstenberger did a great job. He's tried to get them to look at getting the arborist standard going, and hopefully,
awesome?
utilizing the Z133 for most of it. But he basically presented he would like to get OSHA to look back at it and get something approved. They've been trying to do it for 7 years, he said. And they had the other issues on there were heat related and fire departments, local fire departments, mostly volunteer, were having issues with that heat standard. Evidently, they've just come out with.
Oh, okay.
But Peter had some really good input there, and I think he made some points with some people. So hopefully they put it back on the table. But I guess they're busy with other things.
Yeah. So do you happen to know about, or their projected time frame when they'd like to have that done? I know you said, they've been working on it for 7 years, but
I
is there
think
kind of
I
like
think it was due about 7.5 years ago.
uh, perfect.
It takes a long time. Hey James, how are you doing? I think you're muted. Yeah, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it's breaking up a little bit.
Sorry about that. This is, please do not report me in the Monday morning safety meeting
Uh, well, we may have to.
for
You're,
that 2-in-1 help.
you're breaking up.
And here's the thing, because electric chainsaws are so new, I feel like I may be one of the first people to kind of figure out which 2-in-1 is the best for this Husqvarna that I was running.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think I
So
mentioned to you, and I've got the 3 different types of tools out. I was going to kind of show on here, so I'll try to record some things on it here in a minute. But if you can watch, that'd be good. The chain I think that you had was extended pitch 3/8, which would be like the Steel Pico, or it'd be like the Oregon 91 series. On that, Steel recommends a 9/64, but most cases the 91 on the Oregon uses a 5/32, and there's only a 64th difference there. So that would be the one that you would use for that particular one, and then the larger saw that you spoke of, that would be 7/32 on it. So you got a couple of different things there, and I've got the chain out here on a block that I can show you. But there's three different tools basically, as far as the framework goes. This is the Steel 2-in-1, and this is a larger version. This is a 3/8 full profile using 5.2 millimeter, but the 9/64 version looks exactly like this. The difference in the frameworks is that these posts have to ride on top of the teeth. So you've got the tooth that you're filing, and then the tooth in front of it, And so you got to make sure that you have the right guide for that particular size of chain. And so in this, you've got the Pico version, you've got a 3/16 version, and you've got a 7/32 version. And you can probably put 3/16 and 7/32 in the holder, but it has to be spaced properly for your particular chain. So 3/8, like you said, a 72 series Oregon, you had this would be the one for it. And the other, and these are the original Ferd tools. Husqvarna sells them as a Sharp Force. This is the 5/32 version, and you can see it has these spring type clips on it. It's a smaller version. It sets on the tooth that you're sharpening, and then the one in front of that. And so this, you have to flip the files over for your left cutters and right cutters. Whereas on the Steel 2-in-1 tool, or the CSX tool in blue that Ferd sells, Ferd manufactures these for steel. So and for this version for Husqvarna. So when you look at that only works on that extended pitch 3/8. You may get it to work on a new 3/25 pitch, but as the tooth gets back, it doesn't match up. So at that point, with 3/25 or 3/8, you've got to go to this frame, and it has a slide over type holders to hold the files. You have to reverse the files for left side to right side, and this one would hold a 3/16 or 7/32. So, and that's basically the same frame for both of those, but they're sold as two separate part numbers given the file sizes. But I thought I'd show you on this real quick. Hopefully I can show you. But this is a setup here. So this setup here, and I've lost my, well, I'm not going to sharpen anyway, but here, if you look at this particular tool, let me see if I can get this to come up just a little bit closer. Hopefully you can see it. This particular round file would sit on the tooth that I'm sharpening, and then indexing off the tooth behind it. So if you camera 3, as you look, you can follow your front line angle of the tooth. This one sits on top of the tooth in front, and so then as you file through, that gives you the surface of the tooth, and then as the tooth top goes back down, then the file drops down, the flat file drops down, and actually takes the depth gauge. Then when you get ready to flip that over, like right now it's set up for the right side cutters. To do the left side cutters, you have to reverse the files in this case. On the Steel 2-in-1, all you have to do is just take and flip the tool over, and you can follow the errors and the pictures on that. So it's a little bit easier to work with here. You don't have to flip it. Both of them do a great job. This sets up now and does the left side cutters, indexing off of that right side. And so you can see, like on this, from the point back on the tail of the tooth, it goes downhill. So as you file back, because it's indexing on the top of the two teeth, as you shorten the tooth that you're filing, it actually drops the tool down and the depth gauge is cut. This is a great training tool that Warren developed. So these are available, by the way, aren't they, Warren?
They are, yes. I had one ship out today, actually.
But as you look at it, that's kind of it. And I think James dropped off. He was driving as he logged on there, so hopefully he made it. But anyhow, that's kind of that's how those tools line up, and that's the versions of it. And I think, as we discussed, James, you had the right one for your battery saw. So anyway, if you get back on there, if you've got any other questions, we can kind of work with that. John, did you come across any Any questions in the past week or so?
Yeah, definitely during the training, walking them through the tooth, which that tooth that Warren sent me is great for training opportunities. But one of the guys that I talked to, his first question is how often does the raker need to be dropped down? He said, I've used chains and never took the raker down and did away with them when they got to the witness mark. And I said, well, was it cutting efficient? And he really never could answer me. And so I was able to explain to him how what you just said, as you go down, you have to take this down or the tooth is not going to cut at the manufacturer recommendation. So what's your thoughts on that? If you never take the depth gauge down, what's it going to do?
Well, if you're in real that you might be able to get by that way a little bit, but more or less if you want it up to the cutting capacity of the chain, you're going to have to keep that depth gauge about 25 thousandths below that point, and that's what most of the time your tools do, like the raker plate or chain sharp or the 2-in-1 tool.
I know I found on my own personal saws, as long as I don't damage a saw, I can get by with doing a round file one time, the 2-in-1 the next time. Because a lot of times, if you're not really dulling the chain and all you're doing is touching it up with 2 or 3 strokes, you may not take any off of a depth gauge, to your third sharpen anyway. But that's just me, what I've noticed on my own saws.
I used to say it was about four sharpenings, something like that.
Okay.
You end up with having to reset the depth gauge, but it's according to how much you take off on that sharpening. So
Right.
but that's something that you have to kind of watch. You've got to have it lowered, and the 2-in-1 tool or the chain sharp force only takes it off as necessary and keeps it at about 25 to 30 thousandths according to the chain that I've seen. And so that's a way you don't have to watch it with the raker gauge, whether you got 25 thousandths or so. That's kind of the process there. And I think it has to be lowered as we file that tooth surface back, or either it's not going to pick up the wood. So that's how it works.
I think a lot of the guys that had never seen the 2-in-1 at that training were very amazed at after showing them how it worked and doing it compared to doing a round file, then having to go back and check every raker with a flat file. They were like, that's amazing, like how much time that would speed up, their sharpening process. But a lot of them don't sharpen, period, but they just turn the chain in and get another one. But I said, how many times do you have to finish out the day with a dull chain? And they said, oh yeah, a lot. I said, well, it don't take 10, 15 minutes to sharpen one. It depends on how bad it is. And they were just like, oh, we got to get some of those, which I don't know. You may see this throughout, when you go and safety coordinators are back there going, oh, more money. I got to spend more money. They're going to want to ask for this, but.
Well, I was going to say, where you were, all the safety coordinators have seen them.
Yeah.
They are available through their system.
Yeah.
And it's something that it's like guys tell me all the time. So I've never seen that. Well, now you know what it does and how to use it, but you've probably got one you don't know about. Somebody there at the shop's got one.
Yeah.
But I see that quite often. That's like people do that with wedges too. Wow, we don't have any wedges. We need those. Well, now you know how to use them, so now you can be able to do it. But you probably got them there in the shop too.
Right.
So
now I don't know what you think about. I don't know if you can see that real well, but it's just a round file with the guide on it.
Plate, yeah.
I like to use it, especially if it's like I'm really hot and I'm sweating, I'm tired. That gives me something to rest on where I can still do my one time with a round file and not have to break out the 2-in-1. But it's just something I like to use. I mean, everybody probably has their preferences, but
yeah, and all the training I show that with the that's standard organ or steel filing tool, and then with the raker plate or the gauge it tool at 25 thousandths. And so that's basics I start with, and then as you start to understand how the tooth works, then you can start to apply the two-in-one tool or the chain sharp or sharp force, whatever you want to call it. Third tool, I always reply to it. And so all of those do a good job. The only, and you can be pretty accurate with just a round file, but it's like I always show people is thinking through it here. And it's good to see on this. If you take a file, first of all, it can't be too big for the tooth. It has to be small enough to fit in. And then you could go a little bit smaller with the file as long as you hold it at the right height. Same thing, a proper size file, like this tooth calls for 7/32. When you hold that file in this radius, you're cutting this whole surface, which is your chisel angle and the side angle. And so when you look at that, if you hold the file too high, you're going to blunt the chisel angle. If you hold it too low, you're going to start to hook this chisel and side plate. So you have to have that the right height, and that's where that tool that you had, it does a really good job of keeping that tooth at the file at the proper position in the tooth. So you can do it with just a round file, but you've got to take and make sure that you're holding exactly in the right position. And you can do it. It just takes a little bit of practice. But it's like I always tell people with the filing tools, and if you went on to electric grinders, table grinders or handheld grinders, they do the same job. They just do it faster. And so when you start to look at those tools like I showed, or the one you've got, it takes away some variables. And that's where you can get more consistent with your filing is taking away variables. And so that's kind of the key to that. A lot of different tools, a lot of different ideas, and people pick up and do different techniques or apply it differently on different types of wood, softer woods or hardwoods, those kinds of things. So
Yeah, I had one guy ask about the little die grinder looking, sharpener. That's what I call it, a die grinder. And I said, yeah, as long as you understand all the parts of the tooth and you're able to put it back to that factory setting, yeah, I mean, like you say, it doesn't matter what you use as long as you're putting it back.
Mm-hmm. When you get into the power stuff, you got a little bit more maintenance because you can't have the grinding stones be dirty or it's going to overheat, those kinds of things. But it does exactly the same job as a round file. It just does it faster and sometimes a little bit more precise. So, what are you using in your teaching, Warren? You've got two-in-ones?
Yeah, 2-in-1s. That's basically what we use in the field. Just makes the most sense for us. Whenever we take a break, a hydration break, or the saws aren't quite cutting like they were out of the box, then we just kind of all regroup and use the 2-in-1s. And sometimes maybe our team lead or safety officer or somebody by the truck will sharpen our saws all at once during our break or something like that. But the 2-in-1s work really well, kind of for our workflow. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had a lot of guys that they basically say when I fill up with fuel or whatever, that gives me time to take a little break and put a little edge on the tooth, and then after it cools down, go back to work. So that's kind of the process that they look at. So.
And I know one thing that you've mentioned that we've really adopted is to not wait until the saw is completely completely dull to begin the sharpening. For time, but as well as the amount of material you have to take away to remove the damage. But if you can stay on top of it and take those short breaks and kind of maintain it throughout the day, your downtime's not as much, and also your the wear and tear, I feel like, on the chain, the life of the chain is extended by staying on top of it instead of letting it get horrible
Yep. When it
trying to
gets
fix
so
it all at
dull, it
once.
starts to roll the edges over. Then you got a lot of work.
Yes.
So
I think the what do you call it? Yeah, they might learn something. They stay around long enough.
that's what I figured.
It sounds like they could learn a lot, but I have to start over with a different sign in.
As we start to look at the sharpening thing, and James had he came to one of the chainsaw clinics that I did, and so he's finally got the tools to work with on it. So one thing that had some questions on was looking at adjusting chainsaws that are not auto tune. I've got a little video that I did. If you go to the YouTube site, it's adjusting chainsaws without auto tune, and it goes through the proper setup. But I wanted to kind of run through just a little bit, just talking through the proper procedures for sharpening, and I've got the saw set up here, and hopefully kind of talking through this just a little bit. First thing is that you always want to make sure of is that you have a good clean air filter, because if the filter isn't clean, you're not going to get proper adjustments. So first thing is clean air filter, and then making sure that you have good clean fuel into it, fresh fuel into it. And then after that, what I always try to do is I'll try to start the saw up and see if I can get it warmed up a little bit. And that's kind of let me know that the saw will run. Then if there's problems in the adjustment, is to take and then reset the screws. So in your operator's manual or maintenance manual, it'll give you a preset on the H screw and the L screw. And so that's the first place to start. And so like on this one too, before I start trying to set something, I'm going to take and go all the way in with the screws, counting the turns. And so at that point, that gives me the ability to, and I put a little mark on my screwdriver here. So I'm in the H screw, which the H screw, the high-speed screw, is generally going to be the one farthest back from your carburetor, from your mount. And so at that area there, and let's see if you can see this. So I've got this little mark on the screwdriver. So I'm gonna turn it clockwise into the seat. And so this one is about 3/4 of a turn open. So the basic setting on this one is 1.5 turns. So I'm gonna open this up to that point, but I can't turn it all the way on this one because there's limiters. A lot of your newer saws have a limiter on that only gives you about 1/2 turn of the screw. So if you don't have limiters, you go all the way into the seat, and then you back it up 1 turn, or 1.5 if that's what your manual calls for, and then that's your preset. If you have limiters, you close it, open all the way back up, and then go halfway in between that. So that gives you a presetting that should be close to where it came from off of the line. And so that's kind of what you're looking for there. And then you want to take and do the same on the L screw, and they usually have a limiter on it too. So I look at my line on my screwdriver, I turn it all the way in till it closes, all the way back out, and halfway in between if it has a limiter. If not, I stop at that preset. Now I've already started the saw up, remember, so it's kind of up to temperature. If it's a cold saw that I've maybe put the carburetor together or done some work on it, I'm going to start at that preset and then start it up and let it warm up. It should idle at those settings. If it doesn't, then that's where your T screw comes in. It's either a T or an LA. You would screw that in, and all that does is open and close the throttle trigger. So if you can hold the throttle trigger open just slightly, then you're able to have it idling. You can adjust that T or LA screw in until you have an idle. Then at that point, the first adjustment I always do is the H screw first. So what you want to do at that point, your engine's warmed up, you want to go wide open, and you need to be careful. You got to have someone maybe helping you with it, or put it in a position where your bar and chain is not going to hit anything, because you're going to be spinning the chain to do this. So at this point, you've got your screwdriver in the screw, then you take wide open, you adjust it clockwise or in until the flutter leaves. The flutter is a sound on a 2-cycle engine to where it has a kind of a rough, we call it a flutter sound. When you go in leaning, it's gonna leave. So basically you turn it in clockwise until that flutter leaves, and then you back up to that flutter point. If you've got a tachometer, you check that you should be within the design parameters, like this one's 13,600. So you should be fairly close to that number at that setting. So the units with the limiters on them, it's pretty hard to be able to lean it out too much, and it shouldn't really go too rich either. So as long as you got the air filter clean, that's your high speed. I always do the high speed setting first, because on a lot of carburetors, they're called dependent. In other words, all of the fuel to the low speed side goes past the high speed. So if you set the high speed first and then go set the low speed, you may richen, but you're not going to lean out the high speed anymore. So I always do the high speed, then I let it idle down, and basically what you do there is you turn it clockwise until it starts to die off, open it back up until it starts to die off, and then halfway in between. And what you're looking for there is throttle response back up to high speed. And if you look at the video, basically first step, air filter clean. Start it up, let it warm up, go to high speed, then drop back down to idle. And really what you want it to do is you want flutter at high speed, and you want it to idle without the chain turning, and that's regulated by your L or LA or T screw. If the chain is creeping, your clutch is engaging, you slow that down on your idle. And then when you hit the throttle, it should accelerate back to high speed with no hesitation. And so that's the process that gives you a properly adjusted 2-cycle. It works on the chainsaws, any 2-stroke engine, and so that's it. Some saws, smaller saws, you'll have either no H screw or no L screw. You only have one screw that adjusts both. Both circuits are running together. But on most of your pro units especially, you're going to have a low speed and a high speed screw. Then on a lot of the newer saws, even professional, you're going to have auto tune or M-tronic on the steels. So those are all things. But that's the proper system that I go through to make sure that that I have the proper setting on the carburetor when it's running. If we look at this now, I've got this video. It's about 6 minutes, something like that, and thought I'd go ahead and show that in case people have a hard time trying to figure it out. We have sound. How should the chainsaw run? When we start to look at different situations, oftentimes I discuss a little bit about how a chainsaw or trimmer or whatever 2-cycle should be adjusted. And I hear a lot of comments back and say, well, I really don't want my people, or I don't want people taking a screwdriver to the carburetor because they could really blow up an engine and we'd have trouble with the equipment. I think I see and hear about more chainsaws and trimmers blown up from lack of adjustment than I do somebody trying to adjust them. So you don't have to have a screwdriver to adjust the chainsaw or trimmer. You just have to know when it's out of adjustment. Make sure your tank is full of fresh mixed fuel. Clean your air filter. Close the screws clockwise slowly and don't force it. Screws may be marked on the carb or cover. The high speed is the H and is always farthest from the cylinder. The low, the L screw, is closest to the cylinder. The T or LA screw just opens and closes the throttle valve for idle. It allows more air. It doesn't adjust fuel into the run, just idles up and idles down. Open screws to a preset position. If limiters are present, find a middle point. On older saws without limiters, follow instructions in the operator's manual or on the covers to a start position, usually 1 to 1.5 turns out from the seat. Start the saw and let it warm up. It just takes a couple minutes. Make sure the clutch is not engaging the chain. If it isn't, turn the T or LA screw counterclockwise until the clutch disengages. The engine should idle. If it idles smooth, I usually go to the high-speed adjustment first, as many carburetors draw the low and acceleration circuit from the high-speed screw setting. The low-speed fuel supply is regulated by the H-screw fuel. If you look inside the carburetor body, the channel that supplies the fuel to the low, the L screw, must pass the H screw setting to get there. That's called a dependent carburetor design. Many of the more efficient running saws will have this configuration. On an independent carburetor, there's a channel from the metering side of the carb to each screw separately. So if you set the H screw first on a dependent system, you will have your high speed set, and adjustments to the low will not lean the high speed setting at full throttle. It's good to have a digital tachometer to check the results, but if you don't have one, listen to the engine flutter. We're going to set the high speed first. With full throttle held, turn the H screw clockwise, right, slowly, until the engine sound flutter cleans out. Then turn the counterclockwise left just to the point the sound flutters. That's the point of maximum power of the engine and the point where the engine is going to get maximum cooling and clean burn of the fuel. You can check with a tachometer to make sure it's not above maximum no-load RPM. If without the tachometer, the flutter point is where you need to leave it. Now check to see if the engine idles smoothly without the drive clutch engaging the chain. Adjust the T or LA screw in, turn it right, to idle up or left to go down until the clutch disengages. Next, roll the saw on the side and back again. There should be no change in RPM. If it starts to die, the L screw setting is too far open. It's too rich. Next, press the throttle. But if the engine hesitates before accelerating to high speed, the L screw is not open enough. It's simply too lean. Slight adjustment left or right will usually correct this problem. Run through these 5 steps throughout the day. It just takes a few seconds. First, air filter clean, recheck it. Second, high speed to flutter. Third, make sure your chain idles and doesn't creep around. Fourth, your engine idles in all positions without going dead or changing RPM. And 5, accelerates quickly back to high speed. It's also good to check these settings under load, like in a log, to make sure that the flutter is present. If these steps or settings do not achieve proper run results, you may have another issue with the fuel system. Spark or compression could be bad. It's good to understand this setting process even if you don't adjust your own saw. You will understand that when the engine is not sounding properly, it's not running correctly. And in a 2-cycle engine, something is about to break or damage internal parts. A properly adjusted saw is a pleasure to run. It's easy to start and fast cutting. Newer saws with auto-tuning carburetors take care of these settings for you, but remember, a clean air filter, a clean saw, And fresh fuel mix will ensure proper adjustments and long service life. So if we think through that, really, so many times people start messing with carburetors. It's important that you think about the first thing that you want to check is air filter is clean, start it up, let it warm up, go to high speed. It should have that flutter, let it come back down to idle. Should idle in all positions as you roll it out. Take your brake off, hit the throttle, should go back to high speed with no hesitation. If it does that, I've always said, that dog's ready to hunt. So you don't need to adjust. A lot of times people, I really want to tweak it out, I want to do this, that, and other. Really, there's no reason to tweak. If it's doing those things, it's ready to go to work, and you won't have any mechanical issues with it. But if it's not doing those things, then it needs to be adjusted. So somebody needs to find a screwdriver to be able to handle that. So kind of interesting process there. But it's very easy. A lot of people are scared of it, but it's a very easy process. And if your engine on your saw is not running right, it's either going to cause productivity or sometimes safety issues. So it's important. So is that how you guys do it?
I've just started trying to learn how to do it. I had never really had to do it before. So I'm playing with it, trying to figure it out. I got one saw but I don't know that I got other issues with it maybe, but it'll run good for a little while. Then it starts like it's bogging down. So I don't know if I've got air leak within I rebuilt it. So it could have had other issues.
Mm-hmm. So it bogs down when you
after you've run it for 10 or 15. Yeah. Like if you've run it for 10 or 15 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer, it just gets to where it's bogging down. Then once it shuts off, it won't start. So I don't know what's going on with it at this point.
Yeah,
and I've only tried it 2 or 3
issue.
times.
You either got a carburetor part issue or something there. So, but that's what that little test going through those 5 steps will let you know if it's doing those things, you're in good shape. If not, if you think about it, when you hit the throttle and it hesitates, that generally means on the low speed setting that you don't have enough fuel. If you think about it there, if you go to high speed and it's bogging down, you probably got too much fuel. So you start to look for those 2 balances and restart there, because I see oftentimes when people start messing with it, they just start turning instead of going back to the basics, and you end up with it all miscombobulated. You've got your high speed open, and like I said, if you've got a dependent, if you have a carburetor that's a dependent and you open up the high speed too much, then you're gonna end up with it running too lean or too rich on the other side according to its setting. So you can start back at that balance set, making sure your air filter's clean, you got good fuel. You can probably be able to let's see. Robin Elston said he's a steel dealer, and that's exactly how we do it. So he's a tech in Houston. But I hate that. If you'd like to get on it, we can let you in by name. So I'll try to do something different a little next time. But it's nice to go, people love us.
Right.
Or, as they say, educated beyond your intelligence sometimes. Robin says he got to meet Chris Childs. Great guy. You talking about the same Chris we know?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's super. He's driving back from Texas, so he's been out there for the past week and a half. So he's headed back to home in Virginia. So he sent me a message, said he wouldn't be joining us tonight.
Yeah, he sent me a couple of pictures of what they were doing in Texas. It was pretty cool. Made me jealous.
Yeah.
He had some pretty tough ones to do. Can you see my arrow? Yeah. This particular stump, I had a couple questions that came through on, we were talking about notch depth and that kind of stuff. I thought this was a pretty good picture that someone had posted. It's got some heart rod in it, cedar or something, or some fir, and beautiful hinge on there. And he's in here. This is the felling direction over here. And so just about probably a third into the diameter. and it looks like he's got probably about 10% hinge, and that's great in that direction. But I thought this would be a good one to people to realize that the base of the tree isn't always perfectly round. And so if you were going to go in this direction down here with it, then you wouldn't have to cut in very far at all to have, that 80% of the diameter or one third in. So the length of the hinge supports the side weight, and the depth of the hinge really doesn't make any difference unless you've got back lean. Then it can create an issue, because the farther you take the hinge in, the more apt it is to pop off and go backwards. But if you had forward lean, like your weight's falling here or forward of this hinge, it doesn't make any difference how far you cut into it. What you're looking for is a length of the hinge long enough to support any side weight that you have, because it's the face notch opening that's going to keep you from pulling fiber. And and if you look at this one over here, one of the guys was talking about, taking pieces off the tree more or less, and cutting the notch way back into it creates that this piece, if you had a straight piece there of whatever, say 5-6 feet long or something, the center weight of that spire is going to now be a forward leaning tree if you take that weight forward of it. But if this leans back any, or you've got bad fiber, how do you recover that? So, same thing, if you stay out here with the face notch and the hinge, and you don't have too huge of a piece, you still have a mechanical advantage there to be able to push it on over. And because that can be a tricky situation if you think that the notch is going to cause it to fall that way. Because if you had the center of this, whatever this log is, the center weight of it is back here, it has just as good a possibility of going backwards as it does to go forward. So in a tree with a canopy, that's what you're looking at, is where does that center weight fall in relationship to the hinge? If it falls back here, it's a back leaner. If it falls right here, it's a forward leaner. And if you have a straight piece, say 4 or 5 feet long, yes, you are able to say farther back in here is going to cause this to drop in this direction, and it will. But now it's according to how crooked that piece is, or whether you've got a slant on that particular trunk. So you have to still take that information of lean, and that's really one of the most important things there. And I had another one that, people saying that the notch depth is going to cause it to split, or barber chair not being deep enough. I have to say I don't think that's the case. As long as your face notch is open enough, like you see this tree here would move this far before the notch closes. As long as you've got 70 degrees or more, that tree is going to be almost to the ground before it's going to break the hinge. And so that gives you control in that situation. So you want to think about, that takes care of that. So people think that the depth into it is going to keep it from pulling. And I had a picture of a large, is bigger than this one, is on one of the Forest Service guys, and had a nice shallow face notch on it. And the way he had the video set up, you could see the whole thing going through. No pulled fiber at all, had about a 10% hinge on it. Very shallow, because he was using the bell of the tree, the root structures. Didn't have to go in very deep at all, because it was a forward leaner, so he was able to do that. If it's a back leaner, then you apply the wedge, and as this guy did in this one, was a jack. So, but that pivot, your hinge is the pivot. It's the fulcrum in the fall. So what do y'all think about that? Is that true or false, or what? Are we talking about positioning?
Checked out.
Yeah?
Yeah, I
Very
would say
good.
true.
Well, any other questions you can think about? I don't see anything else. Gary House. Chris is a good customer. Gary's a Lanier. Now you got Chris picked up a new saw from him the other day. And I noticed he was using it out in Texas, so I guess it even works on Texas trees.
And from a lift too, it looked like.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent him a message about that. Well, gentlemen, if you don't have anything else, we covered most of the questions we had for tonight. And anything next week we'll be live on YouTube again, on Facebook, and the same references for the Zoom. And I think next week, if you want to be part of it, you need to get in there pretty early, and if not, I'll block it again. But some people don't have anything else to do. But anyway, that's kind of everything tonight. I hope everybody picked up something they might be able to use, and you guys be safe out there this week, and hopefully good sawing to all of you. So y'all take it easy. We'll talk to you.
All right. Have a
Take
good one.
care. Good night.
Good night.